Hi, Dave Sobel here, host of the Business of Tech podcast. My first prediction for 2021 is regrettably not a cheery one. If you're expecting things to bounce back right away, you're not going to get that. The good news is that it appears that things in 2020 were not as bad as initially thought it would be. While it did look quite bad, as the year comes to a close, it appears that rather than tech budgets being down 6.3%, the year may be down only 2.5% and another 0.4% for 2021 per Forrester. Why? The impact to the economy is limited to sectors that are not traditionally heavy technology spenders, like restaurants, spas and salons, fitness, and hotels, which are only about 10% of the technology market. The financial markets were fine, and many new companies are heavy technology spenders. That said, small companies, like small law and accounting firms, are on rocky footing. They may not go under, but they serve these impacted markets. That will flow upward to anyone delivering technical services contracts. And remember, overall, the predictions remain rough too for small business, with IDC indicating that at least 30% of SMBs will fail by 2021. That's, next year. Let's also be optimistic, yet realistic, about what will come. As we look at the vaccine rollout for 2021, we have a way to go before enough of the population is vaccinated to return things to normal. All the science says this will be slower than you want it to be. My take? Summer will be the point you can start unclenching. Think it through. Here in December, we're entering the winter, and the key public health metric to watch is the number of ICU beds. That is the metric that government leaders are tracking to keep the health system from overflowing. January and February will be harder and may result in more lockdowns. Assume there will be lockdowns. I don't care if you agree with them or not. Assume they're happening. This is a business show. Thus, I'm predicting a difficult SMB marketplace for at least the first half of Q1. Do not be distracted by glowing predictions about the macroeconomy, because that hides too much of the SMB performance. The reason this prediction is important is because of the need to be cautious. Thus, for 2021, lean into that. As we look at what was successful this year, the top performers were the ones who accelerated their cloud growth. They also managed expenses well, being aggressive about compensating for the potential downturn. I expect these same performers will not get out over their skis in the first half of 2021, being careful about their expenses. They'll manage cost, riding their growth by ensuring the spend they make is exactly related to the operations required, but staying lean and mean. Manage your cost structures aggressively. Don't sign up for anything you can't dynamically scale up and down as you need, because you don't want to be stuck holding anything you don't need. Know that selling and growth will be harder. While it's quite true that technology companies are doing better than the vast majority of other markets, you also have to sell to those other markets to acquire customers. The sugar high injection as business moved remote in Q2 of 2020 was a one-time event, and thus those customers are now sold and acquired. Additionally, those same customers are writing out their own problems and are going to be cautious about expenses. Look for projects to be tough to implement in the first half of the year if they do not have a direct operational improvement factor to them. Customers will be squeezing a little bit more out of any basic infrastructure they don't need to replace. Finally, be smart about planning for your customers' ups and downs. You should be able to dig into their own industries in order to know what they anticipate for this coming first half of the year. Look downstream to your customer's customer and ignore the noise you're hearing upstream from your vendors. This is one I hope to be spectacularly wrong about. I don't think I will be. I think this is going to be a lot harder than most analysts do, particularly as my lens is a small company one. That said, planning for a rough time and being surprised is far better than the alternative, which is being surprised that things are far worse than you planned for. Looking at the data for Q2 of 2020, those businesses who did not course correct to ride out the difficult first part of the year saw disastrous results. If the economy recovers and you go out of business, the net result is you still went out of business. Not much of a victory if the market is good and you're not in it. Good business skills are proving to be a key factor. And that's my first prediction for 2021. Now, my next prediction. I spend a lot of time on the show bemoaning the cybersecurity landscape. The adversaries are better organized than we are. They have a coherent business strategy, complete with diversification of revenue, company lifecycle management, affiliate programs, and building a distribution channel, financial programs, PR campaigns. One group this year put $1 million in Bitcoin out just to prove they had the resources to pay out. Another seller was listing access to the RMM platform of multiple companies for a total of $150,000. I don't think we give enough credit to the other side in this fight, as they're well-organized crime organizations. And in 2020, we had the first human death related to ransomware, as a patient died following a ransomware attack on a hospital in Dusseldorf. If the attack and hospital downtime are found to have been directly at fault for the woman's death, German police said they plan to turn the investigation into a murder case. Back in July, I highlighted the way we talk about security as a problem, not focused on the people element. Think about my rewritten headline in the context of that incident in Germany. New Jersey's largest hospital system was held hostage by intruders within their facility, and cybersecurity experts and authorities intervened unsuccessfully. The hospital was forced to pay the ransom. The disconnect between one side and the other is absolutely shocking. On one hand, organized crime is systemized, growing, franchising, and creating affiliate programs. On the other side, a survey by Devolutions on the SMB cybersecurity market showed 62% of SMBs do not conduct a security audit at least once a year. 14% never conduct one. And here we are in December, and all the headlines are about an earth-shattering hack. Here's my 2021 prediction. Criminal negligence charges will begin to be filed against those who fail to effectively handle cybersecurity at the SMB level. I'm no lawyer, but listen to this. Criminal negligence refers to conduct in which a person ignores a known or obvious risk or disregards the life and safety of others. Federal and state courts describe this behavior as a form of recklessness, where the person acts significantly different than an ordinary person under similar circumstances. If you can establish that someone should have known better and that a reasonable person would have avoided the dangers, I can see this becoming an avenue for recourse. If the business owner doesn't come after their provider, the insurance company will. Absence of foresight is the key reason, because at this point, it's pretty common knowledge in regards to the attacks coming. This is a pretty easy escalation from my perspective. We've already seen full-on lawsuits and civil cases over breaches. It doesn't take a full-on death to see the impact on humanity. Now, I'll make a positive corollary to this prediction. The providers that avoid this will be the ones who embrace zero-trust security architectures. A definition. Zero-trust networking approach advocates checking the identity and integrity of devices irrespective of location, and providing access to applications and services based on the confidence of device identity and device health in combination with user authentication. Think about that statement. Instead of trying to keep up with a base standard and hope for the best, you move to actively blocking those that don't meet the criteria for entry. This approach changes the dynamic for risk in significant ways. Because it's a pretty clear trend. We are not winning this war. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, change your behavior because many of the current ones are leading simply to worsening outcomes and could lead to jail time. Let's talk the big MSP players for this prediction. When I covered the impact capital has on a market, I focused on the lack of R&D investment. PE-based companies often focus on cutting expenses by headcount and anything risky, and one of those cuts is R&D. Building something new is hard, and it gets in the way of driving profitability. It's way easier to just go buy things and roll it in than it is to build something. The second is the changing face of management. As I said back in September with Microsoft's Lighthouse product, the future of management is that you don't need to script it yourself, but instead configure management policies. You can see this in software development trends. Serverless and codeless compute are the direction. You manage fleets of other devices not by writing scripts to control it, but by configuring policies, which is exactly the tool Microsoft has built in their Lighthouse product. And notably, the current MSP providers have not. This pulls two weaknesses together. By not investing in R&D, these vendors aren't innovating to make new offerings. And finally, the market conditions are shifting in terms of what you, the provider, need. You need to do policy management and enforce without scripting. Remember, scripting is really just gaps in what their products should do. Which leads to the last factor, the cloud. Are they helping in the cloud? Chromebooks, virtual desktop infrastructure, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud? Nope. So big incumbents who have let the market move faster than they have are not moving into the new space they need to. And finally, investor money is looking for a place to go. I've done more interviews with investors than I can count this year, all exploring the space. Let's outline the conditions which are needed for an industry to be disrupted. First, power is consolidated. Right now, we have 4 major players who have consolidated down a space that used to be full and vibrant. Sure, there's some upstarts, but they've been at this for years and they're all just rerunning the old playbooks. Next. Second, the technology is outdated and using outdated technology. Clearly seeing that. Most of these technologies are old on-prem server tech that's been forced to run virtually in the cloud, if at all. Finally, business practices aren't changing, despite negative consumer sentiment. You look at these companies lately, they're not beloved in any sense. There's a market gap. Power is consolidated. There's money looking to get into the MSP space. The technology is aging. This space is about to get disrupted. In 2021, there will be a disruption in the MSP space, particularly around the tools providers, because there's a market gap. Providers desperately need the technology to do policy management and to be able to manage cloud systems. The RMM providers should have done this by now. They haven't. They are dangerously ready to be disrupted away. There is an emerging new space of vendors in cloud management who are trying to figure all of this out. They have different versions of it and different visions, and no one has the whole thing. Names like Skykick, Augment, SaaS Alerts, Nuvalex, Nerdio, BetterCloud, they're all figuring it out. None of this is an endorsement from me. These are just companies I'm watching. I'm not convinced yet they each have all the parts, nor exactly which will be the killer feature. And I'm not even sure I have all the names. It could well be a combination or some new player who hasn't emerged. But with cloud having moved so fast this year, those providers who are accelerating their cloud business will not be willing to tackle the complexity of all the management problems without that help for much longer, because a company is going to really want to own this space. And they have the opportunity to disrupt too, because as long as one plays a longer game to try and take market, these larger players are easy to take business from. If you're in cloud management, desktop management is the afterthought, and these big players could find themselves a feature in very short order. Backup, that's not a differentiator, it's too crowded. PSA, I'll say it, the cult of PSA is not enough to hold a business if there is opportunity to be had. And RMM, when servers disappear and desktops are far less simple to impose order on and should be policy managed, yeah, this space is ready to be disrupted. The way this will get disrupted is someone who changes the dimension. Give away the endpoint in favor of the cloud, or bundle it all together. Change the name of the game. Because I believe it will happen, and I believe it'll happen in 2021. This prediction, the trade show event circuit is dead as it was. Don't listen to the channel chiefs. They're running around telling you it'll be back. They want it to be back because it's what they've been doing for 20 years. And they are terrified of doing anything else and competing for marketing dollars. You're selling those events? You want it too. Old school marketers who are not learning the new craft are going to keep selling you the same line they've leaned on forever, not accounting for the 8 years of e-commerce transition in just 2 months in 2020. And I hear a chorus of, oh, people are going to want it to come back. People are desperate for those interactions. Well, sure. Everyone is desperate for interactions because they also haven't been able to see family or friends or sit in a restaurant. Of course they are desperate for interactions. If you're trapped in your 4 walls of your house, working from home, with your kids going to school in the dining room table, without the ability to go to a concert, restaurant, or ball game, then yes, the answer is absolutely that you want to get the hell out of the house. In a world where those other activities return, however, one lesson coming from this experience will be about how time spent matters. Individuals will over-rotate on fun activities and be careful of their time. But here's the kicker. These technology companies are hitting their numbers, and they're doing it without putting people on planes and spending massive amounts of money on events and all of that old school stuff that everyone says will come right back. If you're in charge of budgets and you're looking at the way you spent your marketing and engagement dollars, and you now have a year's worth of data that not spending all that money on channel still meant you hit your numbers, don't you think maybe you'll really reconsider whether or not you need to spend that? If I can get 80% of my effectiveness with 20% of the spend, why would I possibly go back to that heavy lift? It's not realistic to say that those with the purse string control are simply going to go turn the knob back to the way it was unquestioned. 2020 showed them they don't need to do that. And more importantly, will bring a lot of questions as to spend going forward. That big, expensive travel and events budget, that's easy to justify being moved into digital means because it's working. So many people are making the decision as if it's an or. Either it's entirely gone or it's entirely back. It's so short-sighted. Instead, it's about what mix of spend you're gonna have. The world is already moving to automated onboarding. Think about the way commerce is done by the most successful now. Software as a service is acquired by an entirely automated on-ramping process. I buy and deploy in an automated fashion. Even the vaunted services that can never be consumed online, you can now. You can buy AWS deployment services right within the marketplace. Now, what does that mean? This means you need to be really thinking differently about your marketing spend. Let's observe. If you think, of course, these providers will come back, they want social interaction, How much of your marketing budget on providers who are coming out for a good party rather than investing in their own business or their marketing growth are you going to spend money on? Makes you think, doesn't it? Now, I have advice for some vendor listeners. My advice, if you're looking to lean on your tried and true, I'm a channel vet for 20 years and I know what I'm talking about knowledge, think about the 8 years of online transformation that happened in 2 months and know that you're a decade further out. A decade. If you're not shifting big resources into digital, you're going to be in the dust. I'd estimate no more than 1/3 of the physical spend should or will return. Solution providers, my advice is going to be to take a good, hard look at those expenses going forward. Digital customer acquisition is the way of the future, and you need to be taking the lesson from this shift. Your own customers will be learning from this experience, and their choice of how they spend their own time will shift. Make sure you're finding them in new digital channels. And don't expect things to go back the way it was. We've proven it doesn't need to, and it won't in 2021. Thanks for listening to my predictions. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Put something in the comments there. I want to hear from you. Like this video. Hit that subscribe button and give me feedback. I really do appreciate your time and attention, and I hope I've given you something to think about as we move into 2021.